I think it's quite clear at the moment that the market's quite soft. In terms of, there seems to be a large oversupply, particularly of townhouse and villa typologies, but also apartments, which is obviously causing a slowdown of new projects being launched, whilst that capacity is being absorbed into the market. I think there are some avenues that's helping with that absorption right now, but certainly from, I don't know about you, Karash, but certainly from my perspective, there are very few clients coming forward with new residential projects, apart from one or two.
In terms of the types of supply, if you like, in terms of the range of products available, let's say a city like Dubai, I think clearly there seems to be an oversupply on some typologies and an undersupply on others. And interestingly enough, you actually see the products which are sort of catering to the sort of that mid-range bracket are doing reasonably well. And I think that analysis sort of actually deserves some sort of more considered sort of approach. I think, and all stakeholders need to sort of look at it, I suppose. You know, it's the market analysis in conjunction with architects, developers, and why not city fathers?
The homogenization of product type exacerbates situations when markets are cooling. And so if there are product types that are perhaps more varied, that encourage different types of mix and tenure, certainly at variant scale as well, it affords both a benefit for cities like Dubai, but also I think it affords developers and investors an opportunity to balance their investment portfolios in terms of uptake of different typologies.
I think the type of product needs to be more holistic in its approach to catering for the lifestyles, but also as people develop in terms of both economically, let's say, expansion of families and so on, how you allow the product to actually grow with the occupants. As part of that is the catering for the elements that, like whether it's our social amenities, or like we said, that it's long gone the days of the American formula that to get a loaf of bread you get in your car and drive 50 kilometers to a supermarket. I think you'll see the trends, especially for cities and urban developments, is the one that actually sort of gives you a better, I suppose, quality of life on the basis that things are approachable and accessible more or less within the neighborhood and the communities,
I think so.
That you live in, rather than sort of segregating developments into this is a bit of residential, well, that's a retail development. I think the more amalgamation and integration of the developments are something that I think we, as architects, we should be encouraging.
I agree, and I think if we look at the general precepts of sustainable communities, which is largely it's not a modern term, it's one that's been around for quite a long time. The successful communities are those ones that embrace both a mix of tenure, a mix of typology, and a mix of societal difference. So it predominantly replicates more mature societal development. So if we look back at even within the region, cities that have been established for hundreds of years, you can go into neighborhoods that have a diverse selection of residents, of income brands and brackets, tenures, both rental and wholly owned properties. And that diversity and that pepper potting of community and offerings and amenity affords a much more, I think, successful opportunity of longevity and future development opportunities. I mean, ultimately, if you look back at the 80s in the UK, when Margaret Thatcher unleashed her more commercial agenda, and there are a lot of arguments around that. This isn't time for that to really be brought to the fore. But there was a period when commercial development was rife. Whole swathes of the Thames embankment were taken over and subsumed for private development, and created a barrier for better integration of that amazing artery. And subsequent political parties imposed certain legislation on private investors and private developers that they were duty-bound to offer a percentage of their developments for low-cost housing, or social housing as it's called, and not as a set-aside element to say, okay, we're going to ring-fence this as cheap housing and here's our good product. It's altogether a certain percentage, whether it be 10, 15, 20% of your development needs to be handed over to non-governmental organisations to manage and look after, and there's a contract that exists there. Now obviously it's very difficult to encourage private investors to want to do that and give away part of their bottom line, and that's something that needs to be looked at on a more holistic and governmental level to both incentivize developers, to give them potential planning gains on further opportunities on maybe densification of their developments, extended opportunities to work within certain other parameters that they might otherwise not, as a quid pro quo for offering back something to the community, and thereby gently instigating change. Now, I think there's certainly an opportunity in Dubai for that to be looked at. I mean, we look at communities that are mature communities here, like Dira and Satwa, where there are already a mix of tenures and a whole range of different people living. It's close to downtown, so there are both low-income, mid-income and high-income individuals living there. There are a mix of different service offerings, and that's happened organically. When we look at broader, larger-scale developments, it's less likely that it's going to happen without some sort of engagement at governmental level, I believe.
I don't want to isolate architects or exclude other people who are involved with the built environment. That's why I sort of like to sort of use maybe the term urbanists, and this could be anyone from any discipline who's interested in the well-being of their communities. And I think encouraging debate, encouraging fresh thinking, testing of some of the long perceived conceptions are something that we could do more, and there could be more informed forums where people, like I said, who are interested in the built environment actually participate actively in what it is that they want for their cities and how they like the futures to develop.
Naturally, that whole engagement can be quite challenging, particularly in a commercially driven environment. But I think it behoves us not to engage. I think the reality is that it's often easy to take a step back when deadlines are pressing, and often plot developments are given to you that really don't allow you to engage in a broader debate. But I think there are opportunities out there, as Kourosh says, that as urbanists, as people contributing to the debate, as stakeholders, as architects themselves are, we should at least try to begin and foster a dialogue with our clients and our fellow professionals. I think it's as important that we have this discussion, not only with our commissioners, but actually within our own professions, because it's one to a certain extent that's perhaps a little lacking.